All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the first ever edition of the Wrestle Geek podcast, exclusively on WrestleGeek.com. I'm one of your hosts, Mitch, from New York, Long Island, New York, and I'm joined by a fellow New Yorker, one of my co-hosts, Rich. How's it going, buddy?
Mitch, doing absolutely fantastic, right here from Queens. A little frigid out today, but it is winter and it is January, and I'm thrilled to be part of this podcast.
Yeah, and it's definitely cold here in Long Island as well, maybe even colder. And we cannot forget, last but not least, my other co-host joining us, not from New York, but halfway across the globe. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce you to Howie. What's up, Howie?
Hello. It's all good. It's similar to what Rich said. It is wet here and it is cold, but I don't think the weather conditions are anything compared to what's going on in New York right now, or has been over the previous few days. So, but thank you very much for having me.
It's an honor, and I'm glad that we can all get together and share our different views on the wrestling world and much, much more. So, we ask that everybody that's listening, bear with us. And we'd also like to thank everybody for joining us once again. If you found us through social media or you found us through Hastel Toy, who is our main sponsor at the moment. So, yeah, folks, we're going to get right into the meat and potatoes of everything. And we're going to start off with a slight recap, just so you guys know how the rundown of the show is going to be. We do have bullet points and we do have itineraries, and this is a very well thought out podcast. Usually, the podcast is going to drop on a Thursday, and we'll be reviewing, the week of wrestling and all major wrestling news, and we're going to go into some throwback stuff, and then we're going to go right into, some other stuff like movies and comics and, everything pop culture and things like that. So, just so you guys know what you're in for. Hence the Wrestle Geek. So we have both things. We have the best of everything here. So, like I said, we're going to start off with the Raw recap. Very quick. We got The Shield meets the Balor Club in the beginning of Raw. What are you guys' thoughts on, the Balor Club getting together? The three of them, Gallows and Anderson, and Finn Balor. What do you guys think about that?
I honestly think it's actually a good thing for both Gallows and Anderson and Finn Balor, because both are pretty much in the mid card. At the current moment, they were kind of getting a little bit irrelevant in my opinion. And then Gallows and Anderson really haven't been in the tag title picture. So what better way I feel is to really make them all three of those guys stand up, and then kind of reuniting them and putting them into in the package where they most are well known as, from being in New Japan Pro Wrestling, being in the club, now being known as the Balor Club. So I definitely think it's a good decision on WWE's part, and it's going to be good for all three competitors. I really do.
And what about you, Howie? What do you say?
Yeah, I think the same. I think it's been a long time coming that they've actually finally got around to putting the three of them together. I think it's what the people have wanted for a long time, and they've kept us waiting, which in some respects I think can take a little bit of the heat off them. But yeah, I think it's an appropriate time. Like Rich said, Gallows and sorry, I messed up. What's his the other guy's name? Anderson. I'm actually a little bit nervous, believe it or not. It's actually now the pressure's on.
Well, just so you know, nobody can hear you now except for me and Rich. So if that helps any,
But so I'll say it properly now. So Gallows and Anderson, they haven't been in the tag title picture for a while, and I think they've got to the point where the thing that's left to do, the main thing that they can do with maybe in some respects is that creative haven't got anything else for them other than for this to happen, but it's a good thing to happen.
I agree 100%. I think I think they were both kind of both entities were kind of floundering. Gallows and Anderson, like, super talented. I feel like they got them. They had a lot riding on them. I feel like they definitely delivered when they first arrived, and I feel like Finn Balor, since he came back from his injury, has kind of like, and it's I don't think it's his fault at all. I just think it was creative, and I think it was the way they received him back. I don't think that he came back into the same light that he left on. And I feel like they could have done a lot more with him in his initial return. But I feel like, again, the writing team, I feel like they've definitely dropped the ball, and it seems as if they maybe have started to realize that they have three super talents there, and they're finally going to utilize them properly. So that's
something that I did notice was when they first appeared together. Finn Balor had the biggest smile on his face in the center of the ring as they were all stood there, and I thought, in some respects, I thought that perhaps sums the whole thing up. He looked pretty happy, it was happening.
And it looked to be actually a very genuine smile, not something he was putting on for the show, part of the storyline. He was generally happy, like, I'm back with the guys that I like. I'm actually really good friends with. I'm back with the guys that I ran so far and long with, and we know we can put something really good together in the ring together. They're all three very, very good performers.
Yeah, and so they brought them in last night, and they confronted Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, and what's his name there? Jason Jordan. Yeah.
Jason Jordan.
You know what it is? Like, I think they're trying to turn it into like almost like somewhat comedic, where like Jason Jordan thinks he's like a Shield member, and he's he's like trying to be the cheerleader of the group now since Dean Ambrose is gone and injured. I feel I feel like he's very talented, Jason Jordan, but I also feel like he doesn't have that great of mic skills yet. So, and it's almost like, and I mean, I can't really blame the kid, but I feel like he's very nervous. It's like he's always so like timid. No matter what position that he's put in, he's always like kind of like he just looks he looks very nervous. But
there's something about him at this point in his career that reminds me a lot of Rocky Maivia. When like at any moment, any time, some kind of like the Rocky sucks thing, or I think controversially it was Die Rocky Die, when they were trying to get Rocky Maivia over as much as possible, as it was on a silver platter for him to become the top star, but the audience said no, and obviously that kind of coincided with kind of going into the Attitude Era. But I feel like Jason Jordan represents that kind of that what do you call it? Just an all-out
guy from that era.
Yeah, all-out kind of face where they're trying to push it on people, and I don't know. Maybe he has to just roll with it. Kind of just maybe if they just let him be himself, like they allowed The Rock just to have that kind of extra charisma once he actually became The Rock, and he made it into something that eventually the people accepted him, and he became a legend.
Yeah, so I totally agree with that. And it's funny because I didn't even put that together, like 2 and 2 with the comparison of The Rock and Jason Jordan, but that's 100% true. And you know what even makes it like even more true is the fact that you see that even that cheese smile that he uses every time he comes out, and he's always flashing those big white teeth.
Yeah,
it's very true. Very true.
It is almost like a somewhat of a mirror image of The Rock, and I could definitely see that. Now we just have to wait, a year before he turns bad and he becomes a heel.
And that'll be his breakout point. That'll be the breakout point for him. Yeah, very true. Very true. That's a very, very good comparison, Howie. Very good.
I mean, I can imagine they'll probably do something where he'll turn on his own father. It'll be like, as long as they don't give it away. I often find these days every kind of storyline feels very kind of telegraphed, and you kind of know it's going to come. And so when it does happen, it doesn't feel like much of a surprise. It's a bit too much of a giveaway. But if they do it right, I think sometimes they just, they ignored it with Cena for years. But I think they should, if there's they should be reading. If the people want to hate a guy, then go that way. Allow like Roman Reigns, for instance. I mean, he does a good job in the ring, but people, no matter what they do, they want him to be the face. They want him to sell merchandise. But I think if naturally they're falling into a good fit for a heel and they're getting heat that way, I think that's easy money. Go with it. And I could see that with Jason Jordan. Eventually, could built up the right way, would be good.
Yeah. So
it's all going to be up to creative, because I can, like, for instance, a possible setup for Jason Jordan would be like he would not turn on Kurt right away, but Kurt would be like, what's wrong with you, Jason? Like, your attitude is getting really cocky. You really got to start grounding yourself. Like, people are trying to help you, and it carries over where he eventually, he'll turn whoever he's with. And then the final turning point would be the full over heel would be when he would act, Kurt would walk away from him and he would attack him from behind. And then it'll be a full, like, oh my God, he's actually attacking his father. What's gotten into Jason Jordan? That's Kurt Angle he's attacking, and then it builds upon that storyline. But he's got to get enough steam going forward and who he's with. And I really believe, like, what we see now with him with the Shield is definitely the beginning of that. How long they want to, culminate that going forward, that's up to creative. You don't want it to go too far along. You don't want it to be too short because, he is a talent. He definitely can wrestle. He's got charisma. He's got plenty of athleticism. Like Mitch was saying, he definitely needs to have, more skills on the microphone. What I mean? That's the same problem that Roman Reigns had when he first started coming up as being, like, one of the top guys. That you don't get that automatically. You got to build upon that. That's one of the major factors you got to learn how to do. He's definitely still has a learning curve. And I know for a fact that Booker T, for instance, is not a huge fan of him, but he sees that he is trying, and it's been documented on different sites that.
Yeah, completely. I think there's definite potential there, but let's hope they don't drop the ball.
Not yet. So of course we have the inevitable. There's 6 guys in the ring. There's 3 guys on each side, and then of course it's turned into the main event match for Raw. So and then we segue into yet another 3-on-3 match. We have Sasha Banks, and Bayley. Actually, I'm gonna stand corrected. It's actually it's a tag team match, but even still. Another tag match. We're going from, talks of the 3-on-3 to the talks of the tag team, and we have Sasha Banks and Bayley versus Sonya Deville and Mandy Rose. Mickie James in the corner of Bayley and Sasha Banks, looking amazing as always, and they all look pretty amazing. But she looked exceptional. And of course, we see the face team go over on the heel team. Banks makes Mandy Rose tap out, I believe. It was Mandy Rose taps out to the
Banks name, I believe it was.
Exactly. So, thoughts on the women's division? While we're on that topic, we could also go into they're doing that mixed tag tournament, I guess, to see. I don't know what the purpose of it is, but it's to see, I guess it's just to do something fun. What are your thoughts?
That and build Facebook subscribers probably is what they're doing it for. That's why it's a Facebook only event.
Right.
But I mean, it's something we haven't seen in a long time. It's something I think would have been better if it was on our bigger mainstream other than Facebook, honestly. But it'll definitely be interesting. I mean, the last time I can remember seeing a mixed tag match, honestly, was maybe back in the 90s from what I can remember, when you had like Luna Vachon and Bam Bam Bigelow, taking on, as a team and stuff. That's going back to the older days and stuff. So they kind of bring, older stuff back up, and that's definitely one of the features that they, one of the definitely gimmicks that they're bringing back. So it'll be good to see. It'll be a little bit different. The tag teams are definitely, from what you're seeing. I mean, Oscar and Goldust. I mean, that's not Oscar and The Miz and Goldust and Alicia Fox. I mean, it's definitely interesting. We'll see.
I think the coolest part about that whole thing is like they actually filmed what seems to be like genuine reactions from them, as far as like when they reveal who the partner's going to be, and they like have the cameras following them, and it's like, it's almost like a a real shoot thing where they're actually showing like their genuine reactions. So, that was cool last night when they showed Alicia Fox surprising Goldust. That was cool. And then they showed The Miz being surprised by Asuka. So it actually showed it felt real because it was real. So that was the, that was the cool part of it so far that I saw.
It's like adding a little bit of reality into the whole thing, which I think it's a good mix for sure.
Yeah. What do you say, Howie? What do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that it's actually quite surprising, actually, that they have allowed genuine reactions. I think these days everything does feel very prepared and very polished. So allowing something to organically to happen, I think that's always a good thing. It helps with engaging people more. I think the concept as a whole is good. I think it's a real change. It's going to add a bit of variety, and you can see some just very, very interesting combinations of teams and matchups in general. Yes, I think it's all a good thing. I think the women's division, it's of course it's strongest it's ever been in many respects. There's a lot of talent there. Maybe it got a bit stale recently, but they have been bringing in what was it? I want to say Riot Squad, but I know it's not.
No, that is one of them. Riot Squad is one, and Absolution's the other. Those are the two new 3-member teams that they brought up. So
yeah. So I think and then with the Rumble, all female Rumble as well. That's going to be pretty big. I dare not hazard a guess as to who's going to win that, but
speaking of that, it was really cool last night because I remember since they made the announcement, I've been speculating to myself, I know for a fact they're gonna have to bring back some old women's wrestlers from back in the day. You know what I'm saying? And last night they showed Kurt Angle on the phone with a woman who wasn't announced, and they didn't say who she was, but he was talking to a superstar from back in the day about returning to the Women's Rumble. So that was pretty cool. I mean, who do you guys think could be in the Rumble? I mean, one of my guesses is, of course, Lita. I'm thinking that she'll be in the Royal Rumble. I mean, they'll probably, these legend, divas or legend women's wrestlers, they probably won't win the Royal Rumble, but it'll be cool to see them in it. So, I mean, who else can you guys think of that could be in the Royal Rumble?
I would probably say maybe Beth Phoenix. Recently inducted into the Hall of Fame. That would be pretty big. I would say Trish Stratus probably.
What about you, Howie?
I'd like to see Alundra Blaze. Because she's I think she'd be totally up for it. She's pretty ballsy as a person, from what I'd see from social media and stuff like that. She drives monster trucks, and I think I'd like to see her in some capacity. It'd be great to see her mix it up. I think she'd get a good pop.
Absolutely, and even
from the people who know who she is.
For sure she'll come out as Alundra Blaze and not Medusa because it's WWE copyrighted. So she'll she'll definitely come out like that. That's cool. So yeah, that should be interesting. And then we have
sorry.
The next match. The next match of the night was Matt Hardy and Kurt Hawkins. We know how that ended. Broken Matt Hardy wins via pinfall. Yeah. And then at the end, after he does the twist of fate, we see the face-to-face between him and Bray Wyatt. You guys already know I'm a huge fan of Broken Matt Hardy. I think it's awesome. The music that they debuted last night was awesome. Your thoughts, Rich, on Bray Wyatt and Matt Hardy face to face in the ring. What do you think?
Storyline. I would have to storyline purposes. I would say it's definitely a good mix up between the two of them. However, I really feel that once again, in a big match profile, I think Bray Wyatt's going to wind up, being defeated and getting buried once again. We've seen Bray Wyatt time and time again, be in such big profile matches and be the one that loses, gets buried by it.
He always
and
gets the
it's
short end of the
unfortunate.
stick, it seems.
It's unfortunate. I mean, his character alone reminds me very much of a younger style Undertaker in a way.
Yep.
And going now, if we go back to when he had the match with Taker at WrestleMania, that would have been the perfect person. I mean, this could be a whole nother conversation by itself of him beating the streak. Because I mean, you're going for somebody that's got mystical powers to somebody who has now newer mystical powers that could take out the Undertaker, and then his career could have blossomed immensely from that.
Yeah, and he could also have been almost like he takes the mantle. He takes the mantle of the Undertaker. He's the new dark, mysterious character. So
yeah,
exactly.
I mean, in some ways, because Bray had very much a varied start once he come up onto the main roster, and actually, if they had gone that direction with him going over the Taker, and as you say, he could have become unstoppable from that point, or been a more formidable force. I think all previous would have been forgiven. I think the difference with a young Undertaker and Bray is that when Undertaker came in, he was booked as being essentially the Terminator. He was, he was unstoppable. Even if he got defeated, he never looked weak, and he'd just get right back up again. But with Bray, I do feel that in many respects, all these losses, like you say, in big high-profile matches, it does contribute to making his character look weaker. And I think with this kind of character, it does need to come across as strong and unstoppable. And otherwise, it doesn't really sell. The threat isn't there, And so it'd be interesting. I actually think it could be good if Bray Wyatt went over Matt Hardy, but then just continue the feud until so that way it's kind of like maybe if he wins it in a cheating type way, and then that way they can carry on with the feud, and Matt Hardy can get retribution in the end.
I totally agree. I absolutely agree with that. Having Bray go over in the first match and then it culminates back and forth and it ends up in some kind of gimmick match, like a multiverse, hardcore match of some sort or something, Devil's Playground kind of match, some kind of crazy gimmick match.
Yeah.
They have their personalities are so far out there that, it's anything could be possible. Like the idea could be limitless, and those two characters could definitely carry it. But it's just a matter of them, producing it and enforcing it and going forward with it.
Yeah, and I think we've not actually had that many kind of out there gimmick matches in a while. But with these two characters together, they can totally do that. They can really. Yeah, and people forget about reality with these guys as well. You can, and it's very entertaining. If you think back to Kane and the Undertaker Inferno matches and things like that, they were really cool.
And how funny is it that when you're talking about like the gimmick matches and stuff like that, I just find it to be really amusing in the fact that Matt Hardy and Jeff Hardy had that match back in TNA where they pre-recorded everything and they made it look like a movie, and then WWE kind of tried to copy the same kind of flavor and recipe when they did the Randy Orton versus Bray Wyatt match.
Yeah,
and they had that thing where they went back to where Sister Abigail was.
Right,
so,
the compound. Yeah,
and then going when they bring in Broken Matt Hardy, the first person they stick him with, is Bray Wyatt. So I guess it was kind of like a no-brainer in a sense that, they started him off in his first big feud as Broken Matt Hardy, or Woken Matt Hardy. There can only have two, and he's against. The potential is definitely there. You have two very talented guys. Bray Wyatt, has always been a favorite of mine from the newer guys, like the newer characters. So. I think it's definitely going to be good.
I think, as you say, they've dropped him straight away into this very logical program with Bray, and I actually think it is definitely, surprisingly, very as they like we're saying about Anderson and Gallows and the Balor Club. That was something they've kept it from us. Whereas with this, they've given it to us straight away. But that doesn't make me concerned, because then you think, well, how much life do they then see that Matt Hardy's new gimmick has? beyond that? Is it just a payday that comes from giving people what they want, seeing if it works, and if I don't know, if Vince McMahon just doesn't get a feel for it, then where does Matt Hardy go from that point? I think the character is really really cool, and it's got a lot of potential for and I think it does have longevity. I'd like to see him be pushed with the character. I think there's a lot there. It's very very entertaining, and it's great to see Matt Hardy have a gimmick that just really sets him apart, and really I think it's defining his career in many respects.
And I think nowadays that seems to be the problem. There aren't that many unique gimmicks out there for these superstars have. Like they all come in, they do their matches, they have like, okay, they're the face or the heel there is, but there's not many unique gimmicks that these superstars have that stand out. And right, I mean, other than, okay, you have Finn Balor's Demon, you have Woken Matt Hardy, you have Bray Wyatt and is being with the Fireflies, Who else can you really think of that has such a unique gimmick nowadays that really, really stands out? And it's sad, but the list is very short, I think.
Right. Because now,
I think
a lot of the time what it is that they're not so much gimmicks anymore. Now it's their real personalities coming out. So that's why these stand out even more so than they would normally back in the day. Even though they are very creative and they're very unique in their own right. But the fact is, like, I feel like, opposed to like the new generation and things like that, where they were over the top and they were like far from what the people were in real life. I feel like these guys, they're just extensions of themselves at this point. They tried to make it a little bit more real, even though they go a little bit more heavy with the scripting now. But it's kind of like a weird contrast, because back in the day, there was less scripting, but the characters were more over the top and unrealistic. Now, the characters are more realistic, but there's more scripting involved, which is really weird and strange. It's so, it kind of, when it's like a scale almost, like one of those, those scales that measure weight, like one side is the other, and it's like it's one of those things.
True.
Yeah.
And they're going heavy with one thing, and they're kind of lightening up on the other thing. I wonder if we'll ever have a period in wrestling where the scripting is heavy and the characters are over the top too.
Yeah, I sorry, carry on.
Like one character in the superstar I see that right now with that kind of has, okay, there might be heavy scripting, but he reminds me of the older days. And
Yeah.
I think you guys might agree with me with this. It's got to be the modern day Maharaja Jinder Mahal. I see him, and I see and Rusev for another one. The anti-American back in the day, like the Iron Sheik. When Sergeant Slaughter teamed with the Iron Sheik, taking on Hulk Hogan. It's like you have those over the top characters, that has such a good storyline provided to them, and as long as the script is well written, it can carry them to an infinite platform.
I'm definitely huge on both of those guys. I love, Jinder Mahal. I thought he was awesome. I felt like he's almost like a second coming of Muhammad Hassan. I felt like Muhammad Hassan was a great character. I feel like, he was actually a really good wrestler too. I always thought it was amusing the fact that he was actually Italian in real life.
He's
not even he wasn't even from the Middle East or anything like that. But he played it well, and Daivari was a great sidekick. So, I feel like the modern day Maharaja is almost like the second coming. He's got the two brothers there, and they're kind of like the equivalent of what Daivari was. So there's definitely that side by side comparison. I think he's great, and Rusev, I mean, fantastic. But I watch Total Divas with my fiance, and I'm actually pretty entertained by it. I think it's a pretty good show. It's well done. And I also feel like, he has, outside of the ring and outside of professional wrestling, he has like a cool, funny, like personality outside of the ring as well. He's actually a cool guy,
Yeah.
But obviously he was more of I guess to mimic like Nikolai Volkov or the Iron Sheik from back in the day when we were kids. But it works. And plus he's super talented too. How that man hasn't been world champion yet is beyond me. I mean, I know because of the booking and writing and stuff, but I feel like him and Lana had that great gimmick together. It was almost like the Rocky Four, Dolph Lundgren, Ivan Drago, and his missus there. But
Very, very true.
that was definitely like a nod to to Rocky.
Oh,
But
without a doubt, coming into the tank at WrestleMania and the whole 9 yards with that was
so
great,
awesome.
so great.
Yeah, yeah, he's a cool character, but it's really taken on a life of its own at the moment with this Rusev Day um, uh, concept. But I think it's one of those gimmicks where it's very organic and almost the kind of thing that is where it's getting Rusev over, but Vince McMahon probably won't approve because it's not his idea. He does it. In the past, I think we've seen, let me think back, a gimmick where they just kind of nipped it in the bud. Do you remember Umaga's manager? What was his name?
Armando Estrada.
Estrada, that guy.
Armando Alejandro Estrada. And allow me to introduce you to the Samoan bulldozer,
Exactly.
Umaga.
Now that guy was over, and he was a manager.
Awesome.
But what happened? They just killed that heat. They rather than go with it and think, yeah, do you know what, we can do something with this. Now they killed it, and I can see that. But I think what Rusev's doing at the moment, even though he's in this, he's making the best of what he's got. He's doing this thing with Aiden English, and it's really entertaining. It's a really kind of unorthodox pairing, but they're both quite charismatic, and they seem to be mixing up well. I think,
those odd pairings, they don't always work, but I always use this as an analogy, but I always feel like the New Age Outlaws, they weren't a good pairing at all. Like you had Billy Gunn coming off of Rockabilly, and then you had Road Dogg, who was the roadie. You know what I'm saying? And it was like a total mismatch. But then when they came together, it somehow they became one of the most memorable tag teams of all time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. That I remember when that happened. I remember thinking at first, there was that whole thing where he was Rockabilly. Billy was paired with the Honky Tonk Man, and they did this whole thing where Billy made the decision to go with the Road Dogg, and I think he clubbed the Honky Tonk Man with the guitar in the process. And then they started appearing. I don't even think they had any music at first, but I remember once they got the music and the gimmicks started coming out, I remember thinking, I must have been, I was like, teenager at least. I remember thinking they were really, really cool, and
they were really cool.
And
as soon as Road Dogg came out with the whole catchphrase coming out, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, that right there set the ball for them right away, and I was like right away caught the eyes of all the fans, and they were hooked. That was it. That was the fishing pole. They reeled them right in, and that was it.
Oh, you didn't know?
Yeah, man. That music was great. The music was great, awesome. And I think they were heels at first as well. I mean, they were having I can remember they were having like hardcore matches with Cactus Jack and Chainsaw Charlie.
They had the South Park shirts on and stuff. Yep.
Yeah. So I mean that was great. That was a very an interesting pairing that did turn into something really, really great. But going back to the idea of these wrestlers that have these kind of gimmicks that almost feel like they're from the past, but work now. I think Elias is working really, really well, much to everyone's surprise. He's getting over in the right way.
You talking about Samson?
Elias Samson.
Yeah, Elias Samson. Aren't they just billing him as Elias though now? I thought they were just.
They took away the Samson, which I thought was actually a cool name. I really enjoyed the Elias Samson name. I thought that was very unique. It sounded like so. I don't know. It pops. The name pops. Like it just sounded so good, and then all of a sudden they just dropped the Samson. It was almost like with Big E. Like they dropped off the Langston, and I was okay with that because I didn't really like that name too much, but Big E sounds cool. It's like, oh, it's Big E, But the other one, this Elias Samson, they should have totally kept the Samson on the end. I thought that was a mistake on their part, kind of set him aside from everybody else.
True, and it added to the gimmick, with him being the drifter. He's a regular guy, just
Yeah.
like roaming around, like he's got his guitar, plays, just playing in like local clubs, whatever the gimmick would have been, is for him.
And I always like that. I like his gimmick. It's like you
It's
said, the
great.
drifter. In NXT, he was. I saw this guy and I was like, wow, this guy's got it all, man. He can actually talk. He's got personality. He can wrestle. He's amazing, And I was very high on him when he came up from NXT, and I feel like, and I was always a big fan of that scene in The Punisher, where, they have the guy comes in and he sings and plays that song.
Oh yeah.
When I see him, that always comes to my mind. It's like, I can hear what you're thinking. And he has that whole thing with Thomas Jane.
Yep.
Whether or not it was a fan, it wasn't the best movie in the world. I feel like it's grown on me a little bit more as time goes on. Yeah. So Elias introduces the Miz, and Miz comes out to a shocking, huge ovation. I'm say shocked because he's not meant to be a face, and I think organically people, are cheering him, and I think that's cool. I like that, and fans cheering "Welcome Back," and Miz TV, and things like that. And you know what, the Miz, maybe at first I didn't like him when he first came in, but I feel like he's evolved and he's gotten better as time went on, and I honestly feel that he brought a lot of validity back to the Intercontinental title. I think he was partially responsible for all that, and I don't mind seeing him on TV. I liked it when Maurice was with him because it was a little bit more eye candy to look at there too, because she's gorgeous. But he's fine without her too. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I've always been a fan of the Miz, except when he first started. I thought he was
obnoxious.
Quite obnoxious when he first come around, but over time, I think when he got that initial push and became WWE champion, obviously it was a surprise. But I always felt actually it was strong, and he's got that natural charisma, and I think in the present day that counts for a lot. And they always talk about his excellent work ethic, that he works as hard as John Cena, and they say, John Cena is the guy that turns up first, leaves last, that kind of thing, and the Miz is on par with that. So I think that's obviously one of his finer attributes. But he's doing well. And the Intercontinental Championship was always the title traditionally. When you go back to Kurt Hennig, Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, the workhorse of the company.
Absolutely.
And he fits that description very, very much based on what we're told about his work ethic and also his in-ring performance. I mean, I remember that beautiful promo he cut, very, very organic promo he cut on Daniel Bryan on Talking Smack, where
I love that.
Where he just opened up on him and he sort of like talked about how he's not injured anybody, and that he fit the bill of the soft WWE style, and I love that whole realism coming in with that shoot. It was fantastic. So I respect him greatly, and actually, when Miz talks about the Intercontinental Championship, he talks about it as if it's his own, it's his personal property. But I actually really would like to see him pushed back up into a world title position again, or contention for. And this is a big statement, but I'd really like to see him. I'd like to see him like eke out a win against somebody that you would never think that he could beat, like Brock Lesnar. It's impossible, but I think like Ric Flair being that kind of he could pull out a win that we wouldn't expect.
Right.
That's the kind of way I'd like to see his character go, where he is formidable at that level, and that you believe that he can win. But that's just me going off on a tangent, maybe. But I think
I said that a long time ago too. Like way before we had met. I feel like he's definitely world title material. I mean, he did win the world title from John Cena at WrestleMania, didn't he? So I mean, he's a lot of people forget about that, I guess, because like I said, now he's more closely associated with the Intercontinental title. but
Mm.
I feel like he definitely he definitely already won the world title. So and he beat John Cena on top of that. So.
Wasn't though? I always thought that the Miz was actually world champion going into WrestleMania 27 with Cena as the challenger, with The Rock as a special enforcer. I think it was. And didn't Miz go out as being actually defending his title at that event?
I can't remember.
Yeah, I think, and then he came out the champion.
But he did. That's why I'm thinking he won it. And my my memory is not as good as it used to be back in the day. But yeah, I think perhaps you are right. I'm sure there's people laughing at us on the other end, but I know it was John Cena, and he did beat John Cena at WrestleMania, right? So.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So, but I think you may be right actually. So don't be afraid to correct me. So we're all equal partners here. I'm not going to be offended. But yeah, but even still, he did beat John Cena at WrestleMania, and he was world champion. So a lot of people forget about that. It's kind of like in the back of everybody's mind at this point. I mean, look at me. I forgot even how it went down. Richie, thankfully, he's a little younger than I am, so his memory works a lot better, and probably did a lot less drinking than I did in my day. So kudos to you, Rich. Your brain works a little bit better. But
slightly.
So moving on here, the next match we have is it's Enzo Amore versus Cedric Alexander. I guess the one thing that we're gonna take away from this match is what happened towards the end. With Enzo getting his upper eyebrow busted open and bleeding like a stuffed pig, and
I think there might be an ACL out there or something. His legs were folded. Respect to the guy. I can't say I've ever had anyone, flip onto me with a moonsault quite like that. So, yeah, that was quite something.
What happened? What happened? Did anybody check any kind of news sites or anything to see if he was really injured? Or
I actually checked earlier this morning. I didn't see anything on as far as an injury goes. So it might have been a work.
Yeah.
So it might have been.
Let's hope it is, because this guy has no luck when it comes to stuff.
I mean, just the fact that they actually did a promo with him and Nia Jax in the trainer's room after the match kind of gives it a kind of a work feel to it. If it was anything severe, they would have rushed him okay, let's get X-rays, let's see what's going on in the trainer's room. So
I agree that the Nia Jax scene was definitely a giveaway that it's most probably a work.
And it probably was just a matter of him okay, let me just I got a bad ankle injury, I can't get back in the ring. That's but that's his way of okay, I lost my count up, but I'm still your cruiserweight champion.
Right.
On to the next week. But
because you could see there was almost that point where he made it look like he was trying to get back in the ring, and then he kind of looked around real quick, and then he fell back down, to kind of, intentionally get counted out and not get the.
It was quite dramatic. It was a dramatic fall.
He's a certified G. How you doing? How you doing? Certified G.
He's a bona fide stud. But
and the realest guy in the room.
There you go. How you doing?
And you can't teach that, gentlemen. You can't teach that.
So, I mean, we'll see how that unfolds. Moving on, Sheamus and Cesaro versus Apollo Crews and Titus O'Neil. Am I the only one that doesn't care? I don't know. I'm not being cruel, but
same. Yeah,
I agree. I mean, it was a waste match. It was a time filler. I feel for the episode of Raw. I mean, the two of those guys together, I think are phenomenal.
Amazing.
They definitely feed off each other very, very well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Cesaro by himself, at the amount of athleticism this guy has got, and Sheamus, both these guys right now definitely do not belong in the tag team division. They should be top single competitors, world title caliber.
One should be champion on Raw, and the other one should be champion on SmackDown.
I totally agree. And both can carry a great skills on the mic. It's. I mean, I guess with the situation that they're in right now, I mean, that's the best they can do is creatively is for them is the tag team, but they're taking and they're running with it. I definitely, and the way the bar is and how they dress, they act, it kind of gives a little kind of Boondock Saints kind of feel to it a little bit. I think.
Absolutely.
you know,
Yeah.
which I
They
definitely
got
like.
that little, punk steam thing going on too with
Yes.
the whole like he's got the kilt on and they got the jackets with the patches on them and stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm digging it. I like it. I like the music. I think Sheamus's music is awesome.
Oh yeah.
I liked his old music too. But this one is badass. It's definitely cool. Apollo Crews and Titus O'Neil again. We'll probably have an episode about this at some point. I'll make a note of it right now actually. But this could be a great topic for us. But Apollo Crews, a super super phenomenally talented guy that I could have seen having ridiculously like five-star matches with AJ Styles and
Yeah.
people of that caliber. But they bring him up from NXT, and as usual, he's got that stink on him. He's got that stigma where he's got to come up, and they like throw him to the wolves. They have no idea what to do with him. The same thing with Shinsuke Nakamura. That I feel like they didn't know how to handle him properly. Bailey. I mean, Bailey was like the most over, the most over character period in NXT, in my opinion. And they brought her over, and look, got lost in the shuffle because they didn't know what to do with her. Thank God Paige is here, so I feel like they brought her in properly. Like they gave her a faction right away. The women's triple threat. Even though they have that other team that mirrors them from SmackDown, but which I thought was how do they did that in the same week? It's like why would they do that? You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
Like it just felt like almost like a cookie cutter type thing where like they had to do one in Raw, or they had to do one in SmackDown because they did one in Raw, and it was like I really didn't I didn't think that was cool. They could have spaced it out.
Yeah, having two identical gimmicks, give or take a few differences in personalities and personas and things like that, individually, but having that kind of mirroring of a gimmick on either side, I think it lessens the
it's
impact.
Weird. You have the pale girl, you have the Ruby Riott, pale, then you have the blonde girl, right? And then it's like it's almost like a mirror image of it's like we had to have one on SmackDown only because we had one. I don't know. I just thought that was poor writing as usual.
What they should have did was have Paige come back, be on both SmackDown and Raw, and create a whole kind of female NWO kind of feel to it faction, and then they just take over the entire women's division on both shows, and then just run them like go crazy,
Yeah.
It worked with the men back in the 90s and stuff. Let's do it with the females. Let's what they have they got they got that gritty style now. They don't pull punches. They're ready to get down and dirty and do what they got to do.
Right.
So I mean, I definitely think they could have ran with it and have Paige be the main leader of it. Or if they want to do something crazy, have somebody like, who's a big face, something like, not so much Sasha Banks, but have like a Bailey. You want to get Bailey more reinventive, you want to change up her gimmick, turn her heel, make her be the leader of the entire thing or something like that. Like, blow everybody's minds. I had to do with Hogan. Bailey's nowhere near Hogan caliber, obviously, but if like you go back to the point with her being so over in NXT as being the top person down there, the top superstar in the female division, do something like that caliber wise where like, holy crap, it'll definitely make people's heads turn and make her more relevant again.
I agree 100%. Like they have to do something because it's just like, all these people, and we kind of touched on it a little bit before with the Elias Sampson thing, and it's the same idea. Like he came up, the man was super talented, main event material in my opinion, and then, they buried him. They made him into like a comedy act almost, I mean, not to the point of like a Santino or somebody like that, but I feel like he's not. They don't take him as seriously here as he was taken in NXT.
And I think one of the major problems is, okay, you look at who's running NXT, Triple H. Triple H has got a great creative mind. Okay, you come up to the main roster. Okay, now you're in Vince McMahon's hands, and Vince has got an old school mentality where he's so used to having like a certain way of what he wants for his guy, what he wants for the female, and that's his image. And like if you don't fall between that, he loses a little bit of confidence in you. You're done.
Right.
You're done. When you were down in NXT with Triple H understands like coming up, paying your dues, doing. I mean, Vince probably obviously does as well, but I think Triple H is more. Has more depth of like, okay, let's build a character. We can do this, change this around, change that around. Instead of having blinders on, just focusing like, okay, I see the light at the end of the tunnel. That's what I want. It's at the end of that tunnel, and that's what we're going to do. And if you're not going to follow that way and be that light, then you're going to be completely forgotten about, and that's going to be the end of your end of
Right.
your push.
And I feel like we can have a whole. I think we can have a whole segment on this whole NXT Triple H Vince McMahon thing.
Oh, absolutely.
But I feel like Triple H has that. He has that one thing over Vince McMahon, in the fact that he was a wrestler full time, and he was, he has that life experience that even though Vince McMahon basically created WWE and made everything the way it is today, he was never a full time wrestler. I mean, he did his shots with Austin and all that stuff, but he was never really a wrestler. He didn't come up from the Bush League. You know what I'm saying? Like Triple H has like a different take on things, So he not only has like that wrestler's point of view, but he can also give, obviously he was a wrestling fan also, and he's he can definitely give that extra. Extra.
It's all about perspective. That's what it comes down to, and having the ability to look it from both sides of the track, so to speak.
Yep. So, what do you think about?
Yeah, I think Triple H has certainly proved that the future would be bright with the main programming, creatively under his control. But yeah, it is a shame to see how a lot of these NXT stars, the kind of momentum that they have coming from NXT, they kind of reset and they kind of go back to square one in some respects. But there have been a few surprises. Going back to Elias Sampson, I think when he left, I mean, he lost to Cassius Ohno in a kind of a loser leaves town sort of angle from NXT, and he was jobbing a lot before that. Comes to main roster, and actually he's thrived quite surprisingly. But Shinsuke Nakamura, he's floundered somewhat. He's incredibly popular, though. I was reading an article online about who the most popular superstars were based on kind of Google searches, and the most kind of interacted with characters and kind of individual brands. And Shinsuke Nakamura was number one of all the superstars Googled from WWE in last year. So I think they must be aware, and it's probably who knows? It could be the Royal Rumble for him. That maybe that's the way that they then set up the push for Shinsuke Nakamura. Maybe WrestleMania is where the apex point of the of where his career trajectory is going. But at some point they've got to cash in on that. If they leave it too late, he'll lose all the mystique and all the believability of him being able to be a champion.
Absolutely. Yeah, and you and I were talking on our personal level last night, I believe it was, and we were just kind of like going over what we wanted to cover on the show and stuff, and we were talking about this for quite a while too, about the whole the thing with Shinsuke and all that stuff. So definitely agree 100% with that point. So.
Well, I would definitely. What would you guys agree that going into WrestleMania, the main event has got to be a SmackDown main event? We do not need to see Brock Lesnar going into the main event again at WrestleMania.
Ugh.
Yeah, agreed.
I mean, he might be like a top drawer, but I mean, it's the same thing over and over. Okay, you get back in. Okay, you gimmick a suplex city, you suplex. You victimize, as Paul Heyman says, and then you F5, and the match is over. It gets tiresome. I would honestly love to see Shinsuke Nakamura win the Rumble. Let's see him go on and face AJ Styles at WrestleMania. The caliber match that the two of them to put on would be incredible.
That as a setup, that as a matchup. I mean, when we're coming off of the back of Wrestle Kingdom, where we've got these really, really well built up. I mean, Jericho Omega was really well built up, and it was a spectacle that the wrestling world was watching. And I think that
phenomenal matchup.
Amazing.
Absolutely. And Shinsuke Nakamura versus AJ Styles.
6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning. I'm up almost 24 hours watching that match.
That's dedication, folks.
It felt like I had sand. I felt like I had sand in my eyes. That's how freaking bloodshot my eyes were when I was watching that thing. I was like, God,
I woke up and was having breakfast. Mitch, mailed me on Instagram, telling me he was watching it. He said good morning to me.
Usually I'm snoring by the time he's getting up to get to work. But yeah, I was up and I'm like, and I didn't really have an itinerary, and I don't even know if there was an itinerary. I mean, I was watching it, but like as far as like what match order they had, and it was kind of like, the next match would come and then you're like, oh, it's got to be next, and then the next match would come on and it was like, it's got to be the next match. And then it's like, now you're like, I'm sitting there and I'm like, man, should I just make some coffee and just like pull like literally an all-nighter and just go to bed at like 8 o'clock today? But I just, I was like, oh, so I, and every time a match would come on, it was kind of like, oh. But then, what happened is like, you had that like slight feeling of disappointment that the main event wasn't on yet. But then you started watching the match, and even though I didn't really know like every wrestler that was on the card, these matches were freaking phenomenal. Like even like the matches I don't think that were intended to be amazing, at least just from being a wrestling fan, for almost my whole life, like seeing these things, I can kind of like see where they were going with certain things.
True.
There was one cruiserweight match that they did. It was like multiple cruiserweights, and this thing, it was like one of the best cruiserweight matches I've ever seen in my life. These guys, like, and I have total respect for 205 Live, and I appreciate what they've done with this, and it actually seems like it's, at first I kind of like groaned at it, but I feel like it actually is catching on now, and they have a ton of different personalities that like got thrown into 205. In any case, another story, but veering off, these guys like are so much more hard hitting and so much more risque than the 205, that it just made it feel more legit and less of an acrobatic act, and it made it seem more like a wrestling match, because I feel like the 205 stuff up until recently, now it's improved a little bit, because now they have more storylines and that everything's a little bit more developed. But I feel like the New Japan thing, it was out of this world, man. It was awesome.
I have to say, like, definitely you watch New Japan Pro Wrestling compared to WWE, and you see like how, okay, WWE, sports entertainment, their format is definitely watered down to what it used to be back like in the Attitude Era.
Yep.
You would watch a match. I mean, look at WrestleMania 4, for instance, to bring up a great match. Let's look at the Macho Man Randy Savage against Ted DiBiase.
Oh my God.
A full-on wrestling match. You look at
my
Ricky
favorite
Steamboat.
WrestleMania of all time, by the way. We'll have a topic about that one day. I just kind of spoiled it, but it's fine. WrestleMania 4, the best WrestleMania of all time.
I mean, WrestleMania 3, you got Ricky the Dragon Steamboat against Macho Man for the Intercontinental title.
Steals the show as far as like, yep.
Steals the show. Then you look at that, and then you look at what you have now for a product, and it's just like, what happened? It's like, okay, you have your talk spots, your promos, you hit your big 5 moves, you do your finisher, and that's it. Where is the working? Where's the armbar? Where's working on the leg? What's working on the back? Where's breaking your opponent down bit by bit to the point where he can't take it anymore? And he's either got to tap or you finally hit him with that finishing move.
Right.
That's
and
gone.
One finishing move, not a finishing move, a false finish, a finishing move, another finishing move, excuse me, and then because it aggravates me. That's why the belch came out, because it's aggravating.
Of course.
Right?
I mean, okay.
One leg drop from Hulk Hogan put you out back in the day. We didn't need 10 leg drops in a match.
Now let's look at Raw.
Don't get me started on this.
Let's look at Raw 2 weeks ago.
Do not get me started on this.
I got to make this point, though. Look at Raw 2 weeks ago when Kane chokeslammed Brock Lesnar. Kane has been in the WWE since 1998. One of the best big men in the business.
Oh my God, here we go.
He chokeslams him.
Oh,
okay,
don't get me started on this.
Yeah, okay. You back in the day, you would get a chokeslam of Kane, you were done. Lesnar sits up after 2 seconds. That's a great way to sell. Great way to sell one of the biggest big men and best moves in the industry.
And he laughs. It's not even like he struggled to roll over
okay,
and stood up.
You just took the entire storyline of Kane being the monster that he's always been to being an absolute joke. It's like,
I was watching it happen live. My fiance was right next to me, and my son was sleeping, and I'm like, he gives the choke slam, and I was like, holy SHIT. I'm going to keep it clean on this podcast for the most part, unless I get really mad about something. But I was like, holy, you know what? And I said, this is so awesome. Finally, they gave Kane a moment. Like, he actually did something of substance, and he looks like a force. And then, I swear I said it, And then, all of a sudden, I see Brock Lesnar sit up, and I was like, in my mind, I almost, couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was like, did I really just see that? Like, it's literally, like, it was messing with my mind. You know, maybe that's what they were going for, but I think it was completely ridiculous, and I think they should have definitely not done that. I'm 100%, in agreement with you, Rich. I do not think that they should have done that. Like you want all three of these big guys to go into this match, and you want them all to go in, and you want them to, like, all thrive and look strong.
And you want them to each one another legitimate threats. Okay, these guys are freaking huge. They got massive moves. Any big move from any of these three guys can just end it. That's it. We can have a new champion in 3 seconds flat, with a 3 count. And then it's like, okay, Kane hits his big finishing move on the Universal Champion, who's been champion for almost a full year. Okay? Right. And he sits up there for 3 seconds. Okay.
And how many matches has he wrestled in a year? That's what I want to know.
Right. Oh yeah, well that's a whole. Don't get me started on that whole topic, because that's just ridiculous. Him being a part timer. You want to have a Universal Champion, you want to market it as your big title. Nowadays, let's put it on a guy that's going to be there, full 365 full time, and putting it on the show and see.
Exactly.
But I digress.
I digress is right. So speaking of which, just coincidentally, and it truly is a coincidence, we're segueing right into the next event and the next segment on Raw, and that's Braun Strowman buries Kane and Brock Lesnar with the all the scaffolding and stuff in the back. They had a cutaway scene which they obviously pre-taped, which I didn't mind so much because as we were talking about before, Rich, when we were talking on the phone, this is the only way they really could have pulled this off without somebody really getting killed or
true.
So they had to pre-tape it.
Safety is first,
right? So, and it's unnecessary. I mean, like, we saw the cutaways, we knew it wasn't actually happening, but it was still cool to see. Braun Strowman pulls down the scaffolding onto Kane and Brock Lesnar, and so it obviously we know that they're really, 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 really pushing Braun Strowman because he's a young guy, he's big, he's impressive. I'm impressed by him, I'm sure we all agree on that. He's definitely like a character from back in the day, just like,
now,
magnified.
Would you have thought this would be Braun Strowman now when we first saw him come up with the Boy when we first heard, oh god, it's gonna be Braun Strowman versus Undertaker at WrestleMania. What do they think of putting a match like that together? Nowadays Braun Strowman, book that match. I would love to see Strowman against Taker.
Who knows? Maybe 25th anniversary of Raw, Braun Strowman comes out and Undertaker, Undertaker says something to him. Who knows? That could be it.
You never say never. You never know. It all depends.
But I think I think he's definitely his character has definitely been built. This is one example, I think, of somebody that got pushed to the stars and like it worked. You know what I'm saying? Like they've handled him, exactly the way he should have been handled. From the minute he came in, and they even made it look like he kind of progressed, like because he started with the faction, then he kind of got on his own, and now he's like his own guy, and he's over too. I mean, people love him, and when was the last time you saw anybody besides Steve Austin get multiple finishes on somebody while the cameras were still rolling? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like they keep cheering for him to power slam over and over again, and he keeps doing it. Like I don't remember anybody, besides Austin that ever got the chance to do something like that over and over while the cameras were on and they were live. That's so cool,
Yeah. Absolutely. And honestly, I think you both agree with me on this point. One of the biggest factors on why I think Braun Strowman is doing very well, the theme he has.
Yeah,
you hear him scream Braun when he comes out. Right away. Okay, Braun Strowman's come out. Something big's gonna happen. It grabs you right away.
Yeah, it's like the glass breaking when Steve Austin would come out.
I was just thinking the same thing.
There's that certain point in somebody's song, you hear the glass break. You hear "If You Smell" for The Rock coming out. You hear the first chord of the game. You hear that
the Kane with the guitar in the beginning. The beginning of Kane, the gong for the Undertaker. It's
that one simple note that just grabs the viewer right away, the fan, and say, "Holy crap! This is it's Strowman, it's Taker, it's something big's gonna go on."
Very cool.
Just a very, very small technicality, but something I really agreed with regards to Braun Strowman was when they decided to book him as making his finisher the running power slam, because at the beginning he was using like this kind of reverse choke slam where he's grabbing them by the back of the neck and planting them on their face, and then he had a whole bunch of different moves, and then they settled on power slam, which at one point was just one of his kind of generic moves within his arsenal, but he executes it so well. It's it's up there with Davey Boy in terms of the
I
running
was gonna
power
say
slam.
that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Now let me add this point. I don't know if you remember a while ago. It actually might have been even in a documentary about Paul Heyman. And he was talking about, okay, if somebody's going to use a move, he used the reference of saying, okay, you have one superstar use a headlock. Nobody else can use that headlock.
Right.
Week after week. That's the finishing move. Okay, when was the last time you saw somebody actually use a running power slam? Since Strowman.
It's been quite a while. Yeah.
Because by him now using it, okay, now that's become the move. Like, holy crap! It was so generic back in the day where you would see anybody use it. Okay, one guy's going to use it. And that's going to be end of it. That move's going to be built up so big with that one superstar that whenever he hits that move, wow, stand back. That's the finisher. That's it.
And he's so freaking big that he can do it. He did it to Big Show, right? It's like he can do it to anybody. He did it to Kane.
Through the steel cage. Through the steel cage.
Yeah. And that's the last time we saw Big Show too, right? When he got thrown through the cage.
Yeah, because that's hip replacement surgery, I believe it was. Yeah.
Right. He looks amazing. God bless.
He is an absolute monster. I think it's just a case of when is the right time to elevate him to championship status.
Well, he's already there now.
I agree. I think he's
got this triple threat match. We got this triple threat match for the world title right now. So it's now. I think it's now.
I think he should beat Brock Lesnar when he first faced him that first time at the pay-per-view.
Yeah. But I know what Howie's saying. And he's saying to give him to actually have him win the title, not just be in the title picture, right? That's what you're saying.
Yeah. Actually have him become the champion and remain that. I think he's totally good enough. The dude, he's born to be a pro wrestler. If we're going to say,
Absolutely.
He's like, if you went back to I've heard this description applied to by Joe Rogan, which was, and you can apply it to Braun Strowman as well, which is if you went back to medieval times, he'd be the dude with the biggest horse with the biggest sword.
Exactly.
And you just. I remember seeing him on Raw pick up a chair, like an office chair, like one of the announcers' chairs, the comfortable leather ones. He picks it up with one hand and throws it like it's a plate or something. It was insane.
Dude, I gotta say, man, he's definitely. I'm gonna say he's definitely stronger than Brock Lesnar. Like strength wise, I definitely think he's stronger than Brock Lesnar.
He was also wasn't he world's strongest man competitor before he became into WWE, before he went to NXT and started learning the ropes on how to wrestle? I believe he was.
I'm not sure. Like I'd have to look into that, but I'll take your word for it. I believe it. It's not like it's something that's so far fetched. You know what I'm saying?
So he's definitely got to look for it. I'll tell you that.
He's awesome.
Yeah,
so,
the
match.
He's ready. He's ready.
Absolutely, and I think the match should be a nice match. I'm looking forward to it. I just hope it's not what Richie said before. Like, we don't just get suplex after suplex after. We're gonna see tons of suplexes. But we need to see Brock Lesnar lose that title. That needs to come off of him, and it needs to go on somebody like Braun Strowman. I'd take Kane if they give the title to Kane one more time. I'll take him over Brock Lesnar. It's just, it's overdue. It's just too much. It's like the man never. I couldn't believe it. I turned to my fiance because she's the one that's always here watching wrestling with me. It's not like we're all in different spots. Richie lives in Queens. I live in Long Island. You're all on the other side of the world. But it's like that's just who I watch wrestling with, and she likes wrestling, so it works out for me. I'm sure other people out there are listening that can agree with me. This is the closest person to you. My son is only 3, so he's not old enough to really care about wrestling at this point yet. But it's like, so you'll hear me mention her a lot because I always watch wrestling with her, and it's kind of like a shout out to her if she ever listens to this. But it's like I turned to her and I said, because when they started off Raw and they said, oh, Brock Lesnar's gonna be on again, I'm like, it's going to be like via satellite or pre-recorded from his freaking mansion somewhere on his ranch, And then sure enough, he comes out and I'm like, what did they have to pay him to, like, how many weeks is it? Is this like the second or third week in a row that he's on? It's yep. Like, you saw him more in the last 3 weeks than you saw him in the last year in a row. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know if they're trying to use up his, supposedly what I heard was that he has a certain amount of dates that he has to show up for or whatever. But it's like, what did they have to pay him to get him to do all these extra dates? You know what I mean? So
yeah, maybe it is. They're just trying to accelerate the process to get to the point where they can come to an amicable end. Brock
Right.
can do whatever he wants from that point. Because I'm sure the guy's got a lot of options. I can't see him going back into UFC, but he's a draw in his own right, and that's proven by the capacity in which he works with WWE. And
Right.
but yeah, it's definitely time for Strowman. Definitely want to see him take the reins, and he's definitely the right man for the job.
No pun intended.
So
Intended.
There's
Taking
so many,
the reins.
there's so many. Because they'll set that up. They'll line up Roman Reigns eventually
Just to plow him down.
to plow him down. But it should be interesting. There's lots of options as well. I think we've seen a lot go on now with Brock, and so it's time for a change.
Yeah, it's time, totally.
100% totally agree.
So
and one thing that's also got to change, I think we got to see Heyman leave Lesnar. Let's get that swerve in there. Let's have him
But they won't do that because Paul Heyman is so over right now. Unless they have him.
Well, I mean, the only
him
scenario
for another guy, then that's different.
Well, the only scenario they can actually do that with, I think at come WrestleMania 34, I think Lesnar's contract is up. So if he's not going to resign, and obviously Heyman's probably going to be relevant at some point, and he's probably going to stay around. What better way to get rid of the beast by screwing him over maybe at the show of shows at WrestleMania? Possibly. I mean, we've seen this once before with the Big Show.
Right. Yeah. He turned on him and went with the Big Show. Yep.
Right.
But I don't think Lesnar has the mic skills to survive on his own. They'd have to give him somebody else.
I'm saying Lesnar's done and leaves. I'm saying Lesnar.
Oh, gone.
He no contract. He decides to leave the company. He got his filler for his money, and then he's gonna be gone. And the way to write him off is to be okay, let me be destroyed by a new monster that's being led by Heyman. What better way to get him out and destroyed is by maybe the guy that's his lead advocate.
Absolutely.
Just an option, and it gives an exit route for Lesnar. It gives a new venue route for Heyman as an advocate for another superstar, maybe a younger guy being raised up, to be groomed to somebody bigger. Who knows? It all depends.
Yeah, cool.
I agree.
I like it.
Street, and again, segueing, organically into the next topic. Two more big guys. We had the next match was Samoa Joe versus Rhino. Apparently, from what Rich reported to me, from what he read online, at some point in this match, Samoa Joe was injured, correct?
As far as I know, yes. And then Kurt Angle had to replace him, I believe, for the Mixed Match Challenge. So they haven't given full details as far as from what I last read about what the significance of the injury is. But it's just a shame because the guy's got such potential. He's a great competitor. He just came back from a knee injury not too long ago, and now he's possibly back on the shelf again.
Yeah, it's just crazy.
It's bad.
But we definitely, I wanted to throw that in at the beginning because, I'm sure that's what people are thinking when they hear this. But let's not just graze over this one. This one is, Rhino versus Samoa Joe. Two bigger guys. Rhino has always been a favorite of mine since his ECW days. What a lot of people may not realize is the real ECW. He was actually the last ECW champion when they closed down the real ECW. Not the remake that we got later on.
Ugh.
But so I just I know Rhino is up there. He's been around for a while. But I feel like they I think they could have done more with him this time around. I feel
they did give him the tag titles. They gave him later. It worked. The gimmick worked.
Right.
But it's kind of like they're maybe a little bit afraid to give Rhino the bigger push. Rhino could still run with the guys. I think he can maybe be a good mid card. Maybe a possible United States champion caliber competitor if you put him on SmackDown. Let him work with the younger talents. Let him. He's got a very good veteran presence. Let him help the younger guys learn different things of what to do.
Right.
Getting as they segue further into their careers.
Yep, I agree, and it also falls. Now this is I'm already forewarning people. This is going to be a topic later on down the line, but we're going to be talking about the veteran wrestlers and how they come back. And with the exception of the only person I can think of at this point that didn't have to get jobbed out to every person on the roster just to put them over, I think Jericho was the only exception to this from what I've what I can think of off the top of my head. But like how the veterans come back, like Rhino and the Dudley Boys and things like that, and they all have to be jobbers. And they even did it to Kane for a while, where he had to lose every match.
Yeah.
And I think that's not cool. Like there's no reason that just because you wrestled back, way back when, that you have to lose every match when you come back to the younger guys. They can put them over. I'm saying they have to win every match, but they don't have to lose every match either.
Right.
Like before the Dudley Boys, told them they didn't want to renew their contract, they had them losing like every match. You know, and like that was completely unnecessary.
And this is like this is 9-time WWE champions, tag team champions. You know what I mean? It's like that's the way you treat you guys. It's actually very sad and disappointing. You think they would maybe give them like that one more. Okay, you guys are in the late end of your career. I mean, look, they did it with the Outlaws. The Outlaws came back and won in tag titles.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And it worked fine. And then they lost it. And went well.
So. But you know what though? Okay, they held the belt for 2-3 months. They held the tag titles, but you know what? They gave them that last big run.
Right.
Would it have hurt to give the Dudley Boys that last run for a couple of months with the titles, make them a 10-time WWE tag team champions? I mean, they're already probably one of the greatest tag teams as they are as it is. What I mean, globally. You know what I mean? So would it have been terrible? That one more little spark for a couple of months.
Yeah, it would have actually been. It would have been a far more kind of like poetic end than rather than just seeing them off in the way they did. It would have had a way of kind of bringing them up to the top again, and then that way, the team that then would have beat them is legitimized.
Yep.
Yeah,
right. It could have been it could have been like if they had like a Gable and Jason Jordan, if they were still tag team at that point, just a younger team that really can benefit from a big run from two older veterans, and by winning the tag titles off of them, I really feel cements their ability to to go forward as top contenders in the division.
And next up on Raw, we had Nia Jax attack Asuka. Apparently, Asuka was talking trash about Nia Jax, and Alexa Bliss threatened her earlier in the evening and said, "Hey, wait until my homegirl hears you talking trash about me," and then, blah blah blah, and then I guess later on in the evening here, Nia Jax attacks Asuka. So, what do you guys think about that the whole friendship between Bliss and Nia Jax and how she attacks Asuka?
Honestly,
yeah.
It's I think it's kind of running its course and getting a little stale. I think the whole Nia Jax Alexa Bliss thing's kind of gotta go their separate ways. If you really want to put Nia Jax on the map as being one of the strongholds and better competitors in the women's division, put her in a high profile match with Asuka. Asuka's undefeated, as we all know. So good thing. I think it'll be better for Nia Jax to actually be, being on the upper end of this. But once again, creative might falter, and they might have Asuka win the match as much as when Bayley beat Nia Jax as well, kind of pushing her a little bit below, instead of being the top monster that she was for a while. So.
Yeah, it's true.
I mean, what do you guys think?
I think, I like the whole Nia Jax and Alexa Bliss together. It kind of almost reminds me of like Kevin Nash, Diesel, and Shawn Michaels, because you had the small guy and you had the big monster guy that was with him that always had his back. Like if he had a powder out of the ring, like Diesel was always there to get his back and like big boot the guy, or whatever it was, with Razor that time, and whatever other feuds that he had going on with the. You know what I'm saying? It was mostly Razor at the time, but it was kind of cool that they had that kind of offset between the dynamics between them.
That's actually a pretty good analogy. I never really thought of it that way. So
thank you, Rich. I appreciate that.
I actually like that.
I actually made a good point, is what you're saying. I love this.
Yeah, very good point. Yeah.
What do you think, Howie?
Yeah, I think it's a good pairing, and it's going to set up a decent match. Asuka's still on her streak, so I expect her to, come out on top. But I think it keeps them busy, and that's what we need. I think with a lot of this, main roster stuff, it's always good if they can just kind of create some meaningful angles that, progress things for them all. A lot of the time, I think not everybody can be, at the top spot all the time, and it's having Nia Jax attached to Alexa Bliss kind of keeps her in the limelight, close to the champion. And at any time something could take place that might set up, to put her in contention. But I think it's good, look forward to seeing how it resolves.
Yeah, I think we're all pretty. It's they have to do it the right way and it has to be executed properly. But I think they have a good thing going there, and as long as they don't let it drag out too much longer, and they just kind of come to the climax and exclamation point, I think they'll be all right. So, and then the main event of Raw was the Balor Club versus Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, and Jason Jordan. We kind of did it a little backwards today, but we kind of touched on this because they kind of started the show off, and that's how this whole match was started. So we don't really have to talk too much about the Balor Club and how much we love it and how much it's orgasmic and all that good stuff. So we're gonna obviously the Balor Club went over, and it was a good match. It was nice. You had the Miz and the Miztourage come out at the end, and they attacked Jordan Rollins and Reigns, the mock Shield threesome there, and that was the end of Raw basically. It closed with that, and like I said, Raw, it wasn't the greatest Raw of all time, but I'm not gonna say it was the worst either. So I mean, it's definitely up there with the with the more current times. I think it was one of the more entertaining Raws. I just like to see a little bit more wrestling and less nonsense, but basically what Richie touched on earlier, in the fact that they have a 3-hour time slot and they got to fill it up somehow, and I guess it can't all be I guess it could all be wrestling, but maybe it wouldn't work to their standards. So
there'll be no plot points if you just have wrestling match after wrestling match. What's really building upon? You got to have house show
essentially.
Exactly. You got to have something to segue into, like, each week to build to a bigger finish. What's gonna be next for these two competitors? What are they gonna? Is it slowing down? Is it picking up? Who is attacking who? It's different variables they got to take into consideration.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So again, that was the end of Raw. It was like I said, it wasn't too bad. And once we get through our Raw, we touch on Raw. Our recaps are, just for the people listening, our recaps are not just recaps like results after results after results. As you can see, it's kind of like we segue into other things and then we kind of come back. So it's not just drawn out and boring, and other things come up. So I don't want this to be a recap show, but we do have the recap. And, in between, we throw in other stuff, and there's references and things like that. So I don't want to get that, I don't want that stigma on our podcast. But it's definitely much more than that. And it worked out. This is, like I said, this is our inaugural first episode. So we're kind of somewhat winging it, but we do have some plot points that we want to hit and, get to that. So, but we're going to go right into our next section or next portion of the podcast, and it's going to be a topic. And if you guys are listening online, if you want to go on our Instagram, it's Wrestle Geek Pod, POD, on Instagram, and it's obviously WrestleGeek.com is the website where you can get access to the podcast itself. And if you even want to go on Facebook, Wrestle Geek Podcast is a thing there too. So if you want to like us, that's always a good thing. And we definitely want to hear feedback from you guys that are listening. Any topics that you want to hear us discuss, you can always leave that in a comment or, comment on one of our photos or one of our posts, and kind of give us a little feedback on what you want to hear or what things you might want to hear us talk about. We have 3, different opinions on things. We have somebody that, we're halfway around the world, so he's got different experiences. We're all very close in age. I think Rich is the youngest, so he's got he's about 3 years younger than me, so he's he's got a little bit of a different perspective as far as how he sees things too. We all have similar opinions and we have similar interests, but so like I said, if you have any suggestions, you can leave them in the comments or do it that way. So our throwback topic, which is, is always going to come after the Raw recap and review and discussion, is going to be this week. We're going to be looking at people who never won the world title in wrestling that should have in WWE. We're going to focus on WWE, WWF at the time, World Wrestling Federation. This is for the younger fans that don't know. It was called World Wrestling Federation at one time. I'm sure you guys know that. But in any case, like I said, the way I'd like to do it is I'm gonna tell you guys one guy, and then we're gonna turn it over to Howie for the next guy, and then Rich, you follow it up with the third person. So, and then each person we talk about, we're gonna elaborate and give our thoughts on it too, and try to do it without bringing up your guy, which might be tricky, and we'll see. It's like a little bit of a challenge. So, my first guy that I think, back in the day that should have won the world title that never did, was Jake the Snake Roberts. That was my, he's always he's usually always the first person that comes to mind when I think of this. There's a few of them, but this is the one that I think sticks out for me the most. Jake the Snake Roberts. So what do you guys think?
Absolutely. One of the best ring psychologists that was ever in the business. Great performer, very, very knowledgeable. It's just they definitely missed the ball on that one. He definitely should have been given the world title and ran with it. I mean, it was great.
I agree 100%. I feel like in a lot of ways Jake the Snake was like way ahead of his time. He kind of like set the standard for a lot of different things. People, I don't think he gets enough credit, as he should. He had a great finish, DDT. Nobody had really done that as a finish before him. Some people say he even invented it, which, that's, I could see that, that, like you said, his presence, his mic skills were unbelievable. The first guy that, he said he didn't have to shout to, for people to listen to him. Like, you just have to mean what you say and make it believable. And I'm totally with that.
That dark tone.
Yeah. Howie, what are your thoughts on that, Jake the Snake?
Yeah, looking back at it, I think he definitely had all the tools by modern standards, because I think wrestling, it has evolved so much, and wrestling itself, the entire the industry, the competitors in the industry have taken inspiration from people like Jake, and so you can see the qualities and attributes he had that made him incredible. At the time, I try and think historically, where would Jake have fit? Who could he have beat? Because at the time, I mean, I think by modern standards, if you think somebody like Dean Ambrose can be a champion, Dean Ambrose has got when he's on the mic, he's got that kind of very engaging presence. He can put together a really, really great promo. And obviously, Jake, I wouldn't be surprised if Dean Ambrose was influenced very much by Jake Roberts. But I think what held Jake back at the time, other than obviously he was a guy who had problems, as we later, we found out. But he, in the late 80s, early 90s, man was pushing these gargantuan, bodybuilder types, and the qualities that he possessed, which we appreciate so much now, I don't think were appreciated at that level at the time, which is so unfortunate, because it's one of the biggest injustices of WWE history, that in some respects that he didn't hold a title. I mean, you could say that holding a title doesn't make the wrestler, but even a run with the Intercontinental title would have been great. He could have gone over Mr. Perfect or something. They could have had a good program. But he's one of my all-time favorites for sure. Just everything about the gimmick, entrance music, promos, psychology,
was a total package.
Yeah.
He definitely could work, and I mean, he wasn't in the best shape, like you said, at the time. Like, everybody was into the that steroided, gigantic, like, superhero look. I think that was one of the contributing factors, maybe, But I also think, 'cause, I mean, he's a huge man. Like I know you're tall, Howie, and I'm 5'8", and Richie's about 6 feet. So I'm the shortest of the three of us. Well, I know it's cool. It's all good, but I'm over it. But Jake the Snake is a big man. Like he's legitimate, like 6'5". Like I stood next to him and I felt like a child. There's a,
Wow.
there's a picture of it. I'll post it at some point. But he's definitely a big man, and so he definitely wasn't tiny. But like you said,
Yeah.
the physique was what the one thing also that I heard in several different podcasts or several different interviews was the fact that Hulk Hogan did not like the fact that he was wrestling Jake the Snake as a heel. Like Jake the Snake was the heel and Hogan was the baby face, obviously. But he didn't like the fact that people were cheering for Jake the Snake over him, because I guess people had
Yeah.
started to become somewhat bored with the Hogan antics, and I
Yeah.
think that was the main, aside from his drug problems and all that other stuff, which thank God he's cleaned up, and the resurrection of Jake the Snake Roberts was an amazing documentary. I know all three of us have seen it, so it
I think, yeah, you absolutely. I think you've touched on something there, which was Hogan was the guy who was given the brass ring, as they say, that brass ring. He was given it, and obviously historically changed the industry, made it what it is, arguably. And so that was probably the decision, wasn't it? Is that they had to, because I can remember Jake being over as over can be. He was he was incredible. It really was. And I watched that. I watched the resurrection of Jake the Snake. I watched it with my wife actually, and she really enjoyed it too. She thought it was really, really good.
Fantastic documentary. Fantastic.
Yeah, it was a tearjerker too.
Yeah.
It was gratifying in a way, though, seeing how far he went from being like how low at a point he was in his life to being able to turn it around and being healthy and getting himself together. So
it's definitely a good thing when you can turn your life around and do something meaningful. So,
absolutely, 100%.
But all right, so let's move it on to Howie. I have a feeling I know what you're gonna say, but I'm gonna let you say it.
It's
go
got to
ahead,
be,
buddy.
isn't it? It's got to be. It's got to be the greatest British wrestler there has been. It's got to be Davey Boy Smith. I think that there was an absolute pinpoint time where it would have been ideal for Davey to go over. It should have been Shawn Michaels who dropped the title. Instead, they went for an angle where there was a double pin, and it didn't really come to much for Davey. But I think that would have been a great time, even if it was just the once. He was, you look back at it now, and he was well equipped to do it, and you could work obviously as a heel, as a heel Davey, even if it then set up, that he dropped the belt back to Shawn, or even to then place him into, they had that In Your House rematch with Brett. They could have done a program there where Brett wins the title off of Davey again, but this time for the world title. But I absolutely feel that he was feel who's deserving of a title run at that point. When usually that's the difficulty I find. There's a lot of wrestlers who I think, that guy could have been and should have been, but sometimes it's difficult to place where in time an appropriate spot would have been. But with Davey, I see that as being there was a correct time, and unfortunately it didn't happen. But he got his moment at SummerSlam 1992 against Bret Hitman Hart in the main event, and that was fantastic.
And I remember you talking about this with me on the phone recently. What I'd like to have you do now is, if you can, I'd like to have you, because you're from the United Kingdom, and I just like to have you, before we start giving our opinions on Davey Boy, just to kind of set it up. What I'd like to have you do right now for everybody listening is explain to us that day when the event happened at Wembley Stadium. Tell us about your experience. No, I'm serious. Tell us your experience, your personal experience. Share it with us, please. Tell us how explain that day to us, and be as descriptive as possible, and just give it to us.
Okay, so obviously the UK had become a bit of the first kind of international stronghold, I would think, the WWF outside of the United States. And Davey Boy obviously was instrumental in that by making a star of him. It really put a spotlight on him, and the whole, at that point, WWF had become huge in the United Kingdom. It was the thing. It was, you have these things that all the kids are watching on TV. I don't know what it is, like He-Man, Ghostbusters, Turtles. Yep. WWF became that kind of big, and it became so mainstream. And the fact that there was this event happening at Wembley Stadium, which is such an iconic location, to hold an event in this country, it was big. It was in all the newspapers. It was, and the wrestlers were on TV. Hulk Hogan was obviously a huge star here, but Davey was kind of our talent, and so he had was our homeboy. It was a big event. I can remember we watched it on. This is back in the days of satellite television, and we watched it on TV. And this was a thing for the whole family was watching. It was a summer's evening, and
for those younger fans listening, this is when we talk about the satellite. You actually had to put it on your roof, and it actually. Now we have satellites that transmit stuff to us, but back then, this one was the one that was pulling it in.
And we reversed. We had my dad. He's really into radios and things like that. So we actually had this really big satellite in our back garden, so he could get. We got a lot of television coming from the United States. That was actually culturally, the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s was the first time that there was a real prevalence of kind of entertainment coming through to the United Kingdom, and culturally it was quite significant. Mainly through satellite television. That was because before that we only had four stations, which were all just pretty much the same. And then suddenly it was like you can see the world. So this event was really big, and the best way I can only describe it as being that year, summer 1992, WWF exploded in the United Kingdom. It was just insane. And when I watch back, it was 25 years this year since that event. And I watched the whole event again, and honestly, it gives me goosebumps. When I see Davey Boy come down to the ring with his entrance, and then also the ending as well, where he's actually, he's won the Intercontinental title, and the crowd are they are hot for all of it. The whole event, it was great, and then his music was perfect. It's such a patriotic song that means quite a lot to the people of the country, Britannia. So when you see it in that context, it took on a whole new life, because he, truly was, emblazoned in the flag. So it was, it's quite a moment. And so this year I actually did a wrestling figure customizer. I did a WCW Galoob style Davey Boy Smith, and I actually worked on that during the time, just before the time of when it was the 25th year anniversary, when I actually posted it for the first time on Instagram and on Facebook. Actually,
and if you guys don't know, if you found us through Hastel and for some reason you don't know yet, you can check out Howard's work, which is unbelievably amazing. You can check him out at Wrestling Figure Shop on Instagram, spelled out exactly how it sounds, and it's the correct spelling. So.
Yeah. So Wrestling Figure Workshop, and which is basically anywhere I'm working. Basically, in my house, I've got all kinds of chemicals, and I've got pressure pot and vacuum chamber type stuff. Which, but that's the name. That's where the name came from. Where I make my figures is my Wrestling Figure Workshop, and that's where it's come from. But yeah, Davey Boy Smith, what a guy.
Yeah, and so like you were saying, it's pretty cool that how I guess they, that's how they were already kind of like a global property, but I feel like you said, that at that point when they had that huge event in in Wembley Stadium. It was kind of like, it meant a lot to you guys because that was almost like a hero to you guys because he was almost a lot like later on when Bret Hart became like the Canadian hero. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I can totally relate to that and see that, and obviously Hogan was the American hero. So they kind of like started touching on different things where, each country had its own guy that represented that country. They could have done a lot. They could have done a lot more with that with Davey Boy. I feel like, I mean, as far as the way he looked and his entrance music and everything like that, yeah, they nailed it. But they could have definitely done a little bit more as far as like him being a little bit more, like they could have represented the, he could have been more patriotic towards like the British fans and stuff like that. Later on they did that with I mean like the same way they did with Bret Hart. You know what I'm saying? They kind of like he was representing Canada, and Canada was the greatest thing in the world. So Rich, what do you think about Bulldog? You think that Howie's on the money with that one?
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the best performers of his time. Definitely it was definitely an opportunity, with bringing into the fold, expanding globally. So they definitely, he definitely would have been one of the greats to definitely have a run with the world title if it was given to him. So
yeah, I agree 100%. So
I think Davey is, in many respects, I mean, if you think about how international WWE is trying to go now, he was very much the kind of the archetype of people like Jinder Mahal, where they take a guy who's obviously, can become that superstar of a particular country, and it helps them to gain a stronghold in that country. And so, with New Japan Pro Wrestling thriving in the way it is at the moment, Shinsuke Nakamura potentially he'll be he's already a superstar in Japan, but it'll be their way of having a stronghold. So if he becomes WWE champion, I'm sure we'll see WWE possibly putting on bigger events in Japan.
Yeah, absolutely,
absolutely, definitely, for sure.
I love the Bulldog too, and it's a shame that he kind of had like that same stigma that Jake the Snake had too. They both had kind of like their own demons in their right, and I think thankfully Jake the Snake was lucky enough to overcome those demons before they got the best of him, and unfortunately we lost Davey Boy Smith. I believe it was 2003, right, that he passed away, or 2002, something like that.
Early 2000s.
Yeah, way too soon, So with that being said, Richie, I want you to cap it off for this discussion, and I want you to tell us who was your number one choice, or even if it's not your number one, but somebody we haven't mentioned yet.
One name that popped right in my mind as soon as we decided to speak about this topic was one that unfortunately left us too soon. I know this superstar holds a close place in your heart, Mitch. I'm talking about the Rocket, the Black Heart, the King of Hearts, Owen Hart.
Damn right, absolutely.
And in my honest opinion, I think he was a far superior wrestler to Bret. Definitely more athletic in the ring.
Yep.
It was great on the mic. Had an unbelievable personality. And given the opportunity, he would have been a fantastic and amazing world champion.
And we talk about this regularly, like on a regular basis.
We do, and I really, and the sad part is, I really feel like before the tragedy happened, when he was being the Blue Blazer, I think he definitely would have gotten that opportunity going forward to actually have been world champion.
Yep. And they had several. Like, I know Howie is awesome, and in the fact, I mean, he's just awesome. Period. I mean, we all are. I mean, come on.
Thank you.
But
Thank you.
This is
we should just call this the Unbelievably Awesome Wrestling Geek Podcast. But I love the way Howie puts it out. Like he actually fits timelines, and this is something that me and Rich do too, and that's why I think it's cool that we all got together. In the fact that he kind of tries to fit the correct time where that should have happened, and with Owen, just to add, my little bit to your guy, Rich, is that I feel like there was two different missed opportunities with Owen Hart. The first one, in my opinion, was when they had that SummerSlam cage match I feel like
'94, absolutely. Yep, that would have been
I-
one of the big moments for him to actually take the title from each other.
100%. Like I think he could have won it. It could have been that melee that happened that brought actually going back to your guy. How funny is it that they were tag team champions and related, but going back to the Bulldog that was when the Bulldog made his return too, when he was sitting ringside and they pulled him over, and Jim Neidhart got involved and all that stuff. That would have been a perfect opportunity to kind of like for a lack of a better term, you could have screwed Bret Hart at the title, out of the title. My other instance in time, in the fabrics of time, where I think Owen Hart should have and could have won the world title, was when he came back as the Black Heart.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he had that match with Shawn Michaels on Raw, and then the Triple H wound up hitting him with the crutch when he had him in the sharpshooter. I think he should have won the title there too, because he came back. And even if you go back on YouTube or the network or wherever you can find this footage, when he comes back and confronts Vince McMahon calls him out, he jumps the guardrail. That is like, I watched it maybe about 2 weeks ago again for like the millionth time. And I can't tell you, man, what a feeling it is to see, he had like the facial hair, and he had the sunglasses, and he just looked so freaking cool. Like, he looked like, and he grabs Vince McMahon by the jacket, you know what I'm saying? Like, that was it still was probably, that may have been even more of an opportune time to give him the title, in the fact that Bret Hart had just gotten screwed, not too long before that, and like, he was returning to kind of carry the Hart legacy on, you know what I'm saying?
And if I remember correctly, didn't he return? I believe it was '97 December, Generation X in your house. I think it was HBK. I think was versus Ken Shamrock.
Yep.
And at the end of the match, he was Michaels is on the apron facing the announcer's table, and Owen comes out of nowhere and pushes him onto the table, and all of a sudden, like, who the heck just pushed him onto the table and broke it? And all of a sudden, it's like he looks up and he's like, "Oh my God, it's Owen Hart with a completely different look," and it's
awesome.
like, "Oh, whoa!"
He looks so cool, man.
He no longer was the Rocket. He no longer was the King of Hearts. He was like, he was a whole different person. You can tell by just the look in his eyes. He was driven more. It was fantastic.
And I was always a huge fan of Owen Hart's music, man. And obviously, I own a DJ company. That's what I do for a living. But I love music, man, and I'm big into the wrestling themes. I listen to them in my car when I'm driving sometimes, just because.
I'm with you, buddy.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I know, absolutely. We do it together sometimes when we listen to the music.
Yeah, this is true.
But I loved his original theme song, which was, I guess, the New Foundation used it too or whatever, and then High Energy. But I love that music, and then they gave him the new music, the Blackheart music, and I thought that was great too. It fit him at the time. He looked awesome. He had that burning heart with like the orange and pink colors in it. Oh, it looks so Owen Hart. Definitely.
Badass.
I'm gonna say out of the three that we mentioned, it's probably very close, but I'm gonna say Owen Hart is definitely probably the one that should have been the Grand Slam champion as well. You know what I'm saying? He had the European, he had the
Intercontinental tag titles.
Tag titles.
Yeah.
And he won King of the Ring. He should have been, like, there's no doubt, at all. He could have been multiple time champion and it would have worked.
Oh, absolutely.
I think during that kind of that era when he came back as the Blackheart, I think there's multiple occasions that he could have become the champion, because during that time we were seeing, the rise of The Rock and Triple H as well, becoming kind of finally getting out of the mid card that he was stuck in for such a long time, into this kind of main event status. And it's completely realistic to think that Owen could go over either of those guys at that time. So And it's one of those things, isn't it? Is where, because of his lineage as well.
Right.
I think if he had done it, nobody would have gone, "Oh, I don't think Owen has credibility." The guy, he comes from the family, the wrestling family of Canada. So. Yeah.
And it was 100% believable.
Totally.
It was something that was definitely believable, and it would have worked no matter what, no matter which way you mixed and matched it. It would have worked no matter what, any point in time. Once he became once he became the King of Hearts, when he kicked Bret Hart's leg out of his leg, that was that was like the turning point where it would have definitely been believable. I don't know if so much, High Energy Owen Hart would have the Rocket when he was just the Rocket. You know, I don't know if that would have worked for him.
When he kicked the leg out of his leg at Royal Rumble '94.
Royal Rumble. They were fighting the Quebecers.
Just because Brett was too damn selfish. All you had to do was tag me.
All you had to do was tag me, Brett. All you had to do was tag me. But you were too damn selfish. You were too damn selfish, Brett.
That's the hard impression to do. That was good.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. I used to when we used to play wrestle and we used to pretend me and Richie were involved in a little wrestling federation when we were kids, and we used to pretend that we were wrestlers. I was always Owen Hart, so it's kind of like. It's kind of like
I'm not a nugget. I'm a black man. A soul survivor.
Woo!
Amazing.
I thought I always find this need to like validate my statements, So like even with the Hasbro stuff, like I run Hastel Toy, and I'm that's my thing. That's how this all transpired. It kind of all came about from that, for the most part. And you can find me at Hastel Toy on Instagram, or you can go to hasteltoy.com and you'll find me. I think I got that one right that time. I forgot. I left the shop out before. I apologize about that. It's getting up there. It's been a long day. I apologize. But Hastel Toy, and you can find everything Hasbro and wrestling related, along with the custom belts that my good boy at the Wrestling Figure Shop.
Workshop.
Why do I keep leaving out that work? It's too damn long. You need to shorten that thing.
Well, that's why it's abbreviated as WFW.
Oh my god! Why I keep missing the work. You know what it is? I don't like to work, so that word is not in my vocabulary. That's what it is. I hate work. I hate it. I hate Austin. I hate work. But Wrestling Figure Workshop.
Nice
Jesus, say that 10 times fast. Jesus. In any case, but that's where that's twice, man. It's like that. It's like I'm only allowed to make one mistake per podcast, and I screwed up twice.
You ruined it. You ruined it. Damn it. You ruined it.
Mine is simple. Hastel Toy. It's two words. You put them together and you hit a .com. This one's a Wrestling Figure Workshop. It's long, man. It's long. It's a lot to type. People are lazy nowadays. They don't want to friggin' type. But no, I love the name. I think it's awesome and it's unique. I mean, how is it that nobody ever came up with that name before? You're the first one, so it's cool.
Yeah, I think it's about customizing, isn't it? And so it's it describes the hands-on nature of what I'm doing with it. So and the fact that it's wrestling figures, and that's what it's all about.
I was a very, very big believer in your belts, and I'm glad that we were able to do that. On a side note, and that's how you and I became buds. Now we're really good friends now. So
absolutely phenomenal work. I'm telling you, when Mitch showed me the belts, I was like, wow. I said that's incredible. The work is so detailed.
Yeah. And they look spot on, man. They look just like the in the spirit of the original Hasbro belt that came out.
Absolutely.
If you're in the U.S. and you haven't ordered them yet, you can get them from me. And if you're in anywhere else besides the U.S. and Canada, you must, and it's an absolute must that you have to go through the creator and the inventor of those belts. So
thank you very much.
At Wrestling Figure Workshop. And you can go to. I got it that time. I broke a sweat though. It was a long name, but I got it. I got it that time. But yeah, that's those belts are awesome, man. And
Thank you.
We're only a few days away from me actually holding them in my hands, like in multitude. So
yeah, there's more coming as well. I've got more that I'm working on plenty more, and they'll be coming over to you soon. And
I can't wait for it.
I'm just real glad that thanks very much for reaching out to me and supporting what I do, and thank you very much for inviting me to come onto this podcast as well. I've never done this before, and it's really exciting and really cool. Great thing to do.
And you did a great job, as I knew you would. I mean, look at it. I mean, we've only known each other for about a month or so, maybe a little bit less. But you and I, we're very much alike, and me and Richie are very much alike. So in turn, I guess we're all very much alike. We have similar views, and I mean, obviously not going to agree on everything, but we're pretty damn close, man. I'm going to say 90. We're in the high 90s of percentile.
I have to agree.
So.
Well, I think the name of the podcast says it all. We're Wrestle Geeks.
Absolutely.
So
it's
100%. 100%.
And I want to thank, like I said, there's three co-hosts on this. We're almost like the Three Stooges. We're the three amigos, if you will. And I hope you guys enjoyed listening to this podcast. I hope it was entertaining for both new and long-time WWE/WWF fans. And this is our, like I said, I'll say it one more time. This is our first ever inaugural podcast. So be easy on us. Give us a chance. Going forward, obviously, it's only going to get better and better. So, keep us in your hearts. Listen to us every week if you can, and expect good things from us. And like I said, just to plug it one more time, if I didn't do it already, you can check out our, where this all started from, Hastel Toy, which is HASTTEL Toy. On Instagram. It's the main place where you get the most up-to-date stuff on what we're doing and sales and things like that. And then, like I said, for all of our overseas folks that are not in the U.S. and Canada, check out Wrestling Figure Workshop on Instagram.
Yep, that's right.
And, but we'll see you next week, and we hope you enjoyed listening to us talk about wrestling and what have you. And thanks again, boys.
That's it. Mitch, Howie, been a pleasure.
No, thanks very much. It's been great chatting to you guys like this. It's great. I can't wait to do it again.
Absolutely. Likewise.
All right. And to quote Howie, cheers, folks.